All right, Creating Change, please welcome Andy Garcia, Director of Creating Change, and Kierra Johnson, Deputy Executive Director.
What's up?
Not much, just hanging out in Detroit with a few thousand friends.
What's everybody doing here?
It's the 31st Creating Change Conference.
But what's Creating Change?
Creating Change is the conference where the LGBTQ movement learns and connects, resists and persists, and dances and advances together. It's also the largest conference for LGBTQ activists in the country. And it's been happening for 31 years.
Yes.
We're on the shoulders of giants here, carrying on a long history of fighting for freedom, justice, and equality for LGBTQ people.
I know that's right. The LGBTQ task. Oh, what's happening here? Should we stop?
Free Palestine! Free Palestine! Free Palestine! Free Palestine! Free Palestine! Free Palestine! Free Palestine!
We would stand.
Free Palestine! Free Palestine! Free Palestine! Free Palestine! Did they turn me off? They did.
That mic's not on.
Hi, we are,
Yeah.
wonderful.
Mike's, yeah.
We're the Cancel Pinkwashing Coalition. We've been protesting pinkwashing and censorship at the task force since 2016, and we're back again because there's a continued ban on Palestinian content, and that is stretched into Jewish and Muslim content at this conference, and we won't stand for that. As they just said, we're here in Detroit. Detroit has been the home of some of the most virulent anti-Semites in American history. From Father Tom Coughlin to Henry Ford, an avowed Nazi. There has been a history of anti-Semitism that Jews, Muslims, and radical accomplices have been struggling against in Detroit and around the country for decades. We at Creating Change and the Cancel Pinkwashing Coalition want there to be a robust programming that reflects the task force's so-called commitment to change, dignity, and equality. And by the way, the anti-Muslim ban ad in all of your programs. We want there to be robust Jewish and Muslim programming at this conference. This year, there is no Muslim programming at this conference. There is one Jewish session, and it's a caucus. In a town with this history, in a state that elected the first Palestinian woman to the US Congress, there is still a ban on Palestine at Creating Change because the task force is afraid that people are going to come here to seek their full liberation and donors might get mad. The ADL, the Anti-Defamation League, has a partnership with Creating Change. They encouraged this ban, this Palestine ban at Creating Change, as part of a reaction to protests that took place in 2016. I'm Jewish. I'm here to say that the ADL does not speak for me, and the ADL does not speak for queers. In fact, if you look into their history, they have committed acts of severe violence against the queer and trans liberation movement. The ADL spied on the reason many of us are here, Queer Nation, and they spied on ACT UP in the 80s. Is that an organization that the task force should have a partnership with? One that spied on ACT UP? No. We want a conference and a space where radical queer and trans people, radical Jews, radical Muslims, radical Palestinians, radical people from across the globe and around the country can come together and discuss all parts of our liberation. And right now, our content is being censored, our liberation is being silenced, and our voices are being shut down because the task force is too cowardly to have a conversation on one of the leading social justice issues of our time, Palestinian freedom. This is a huge issue in the queer community. Clap if you want a free Palestine. Clap a little bit louder. Come on. There's people here at this conference who want a free Palestine. Last year we protested this conference. We did a guerrilla session out in the hall because we submitted 7 workshops about Palestine and pinkwashing to Creating Change. All of them were rejected. Task Force Executive Director Ria Carey said that the task force does not have an international mission and wants to focus on global issues, and yet did a fundraiser with an Israeli dance party that March. International agenda? That looks like one to me. That looks like a bias to me. That looks like a systemic attempt to silence Palestinian voices and radical Jewish and Muslim voices at this conference. We are not going to have it anymore. We have continued to try to attempt a dialogue with the conference, and we have not been met in good faith. Dozens of Jewish and Muslim activists have given their time and their emotional labor to educate Creating Change and the task force, and we have been met with stone-cold silence, censorship, and bans. We're not going to stand for that anymore. So we've gone up here, we've taken the podium at the plenary, and we're telling all of you that we are going to be here, and we're going to keep coming back. We're going to keep protesting this conference. We're going to keep forcing the issue of a free Palestine part and parcel of queer and trans liberation until the task force lets us have the discussions that we deserve in this place which they call an indispensable resource for queer and trans activism and LGBTQ liberation in the United States. I'm Jewish, I'm a lesbian, I'm a trans woman, and my liberation cannot be had without Palestinian liberation. This conference is not a space for activism and change unless free Palestine can be discussed in these conference halls. Until that moment, this is not creating change, it's creating chains. We say, free Palestine. And we're going to keep coming back because this is an intersectional issue, like this chant that so many of y'all probably know. From Palestine to Mexico, all the walls have got to go. From Palestine to Mexico, all the walls have got to go. From Palestine to Mexico, all the walls have got to go. From Palestine to Mexico, all the walls have got to go. From Palestine to Mexico,
all the walls have got to go. Hi, everyone. Thanks for your undivided attention right now. I want to introduce myself. My name is Mina Arya, and I'm a non-binary Muslim Oklahoman, Korean, and Iranian child of immigrants, and I stand before you today as a human rights defender. This is my first year here at Creating Change, and I've heard a lot about where the task force stands on a lot of issues, but I've heard a lot more about where they don't stand, and that's why I'm up here right now. Over the course of its 31-year history, Creating Change has made it clear that it does not support Palestinian lives, nor does it support dismantling Israeli apartheid and occupation. Even worse, the task force has essentially banned discussion of Palestine and Zionist pinkwashing, despite the fact that it is a major focus of queer anti-racist organizing around the US, and also despite the crisis of attacks on queer anti-racist activism by both right-wing groups and the Israeli government. What we need from Creating Change right now is support and commitment, not erasure. The task force routinely rejects workshops that would give space to Middle Eastern and North African queers to talk about issues that affect their communities, issues including pinkwashing, Zionism, Islamophobia, and colonial violence. The task force has also forced us to fight to have affinity spaces, the bare minimum they could do to acknowledge us. The task force has gone even further by recently refusing to accept Jewish faith-related workshops in fear that anti-Zionist and anti-pinkwashing work may be discussed within these spaces. Because of the identities possessed and the lives we live and the worlds we live them in, more often than not, our identities cannot be distinguished from our work, and our work from our identities. For some of us, and I'd be surprised if not all of us, or most of us, we do the work so that we can survive and so that our people can live as full humans with dignity. Our personal liberations rely on us doing this work. So when the task force intentionally censors and denies space to individuals based solely on their race, their ethnicity, their identity, or their faith, we are witnessing not only erasure and outright denial of dignity, but also an existential crisis. This crisis is dangerous because our movement is at stake, our lives are at stake, and our liberation is at stake. Because of the conference's ban on Palestine, I myself am unable to show up as my full self at this conference or in this community right here. A free Palestine and my ability to show up as a queer Muslim is tightly bound up in my liberation. With this ban right now, creating change is telling me I cannot be free. Instead of erasing queers like myself engaged in Palestine liberation and anti-pinkwashing work, we should be lifting up the work they've done to move us closer to queer and trans liberation. We demand acknowledgement and commitment from the task force and solidarity from all of you. So in this vein, I'm going to tell you the Canceling Pinkwashing Coalition. We have 4 demands for the task force to tell them to renounce pinkwashing, Islamophobia, and anti-Semitism. So number 1, we ask them to lift the informal ban on Palestine and stop pinkwashing Israeli apartheid. Commit to honoring the call for boycott, divestment, and sanctions, BDS, of Israel and Israeli institutions. 2, publicly apologize to the queer and trans Muslim, Jewish, Mina Swana communities, particularly queer and trans Palestinians, for the task force role in deliberately silencing and censoring these communities and their organizing. 3, commit to providing time and space for workshops focused on queer and trans decolonization work that includes queer and trans Palestinian liberation. And finally, 4, commit to providing time and space for Jewish and Muslim faith programming that is equal to the time provided for Christian faith programming. Thank you.
So in that vein, y'all, we've got some program changes for you. The Cancel Pinkwashing Coalition, now every year at Creating Change, because we submit workshops and they get rejected, so we come here and present them anyway, is going to present 2 guerrilla workshops this year. During session 4, we're going to have a bed sheet tacked up in the hall somewhere because we can't get a fancy projector in a room, and because it's really punk and we really like that. We're going to have during session 4 a workshop called GTFO, How Anti-Muslim Orgs Are Co-opting Queer Organizing and Poisoning Queer Spaces. During workshop session 5, we're going to have a workshop called Pride with Prejudice, Exposing the Pinkwashing Agenda, which is going to detail how orgs in the US and internationally are deeply bound up in right-wing money, Republican Party interests, and censorship, and they pretend to have progressive interests at heart. They come in and they pinkwash, and we're going to show how the task force is connected to that as well. And then in workshop session 6, we're going to let y'all tell us what you would like to see, and we're going to maybe repeat one of those workshops. We're going to have a couple of different locations, but we really want to make sure that everybody has a chance to see one of our workshops and hear this programming that Creating Change is essentially trying to censor. When we have to fight for MENA caucuses and get told that there's a Muslim caucus, but there's no Muslim caucus on the program. We submit Jewish sessions and have our friends submit Jewish sessions. They get rejected and there's only a caucus on the program. When we submit a bunch of workshops every single year to try to talk about pinkwashing, to try to talk about Palestine, to try to talk about even things as simple as decolonialism and anti-colonial solidarity, and those workshops get rejected, that sends a message to us. And the message to us is that we have to come up here and just tell you, we're going to tell you these things anyway. We're going to present these things anyway, and we are not going to stand for censorship at the task force. So we're going to get out of here before somebody gets up off the stage and tells us to leave. But we're going to leave with a sentiment that our coalition shares and one that we think that a lot of people in this room shares too. We want a free Palestine, and we think that we're going to force this issue here at the conference until we get the proper space and recognition that we deserve. And hopefully one day, from the river to the sea, Palestine will be free. From the river to the sea, Palestine will be free. From the river to the sea, Palestine will be free. From the river to the sea, Palestine will be free. From the river to the sea, Palestine.
So, as I was saying, this is an activist conference. I'm happy to share my time. We also do have a great Detroit plenary, some really wonderful people who are joining us to really showcase what makes this city special. So I do want to make sure that we have time for them to bring that magic to the stage. I'm Andy Garcia, the brand new Director of Creating Change. We've worked with an amazing team to produce this conference. I really want to recognize Mel Brayman, Morgan Butler, Daniel Moberg, and Evangeline Weiss. These are the core members of the Creating Change team. I want to thank them for the countless hours, phone calls, meetings, spreadsheets, all the things. I also want to thank the City of Detroit for hosting us, including our 4 co-chairs, whom you'll hear from in a few minutes. The host committee here in Detroit had over 100 members, well over 100 members, so Detroit really showed up for us. And in addition, we had over 400 volunteers, and everyone has given us so much Detroit and Michigan love. I'm so happy to be here in Detroit, and I also want to call out to my sister Vicky, who's lived here for about 20 years, who's in the audience tonight. But most importantly, I want to thank all of you, the beautiful people, for being here with us as we create change. We've got a lot planned for you over the next 3 days. I'm going to let Kierra introduce herself.
We've got a script, and I'm like totally not going to be on script, which means the people back there are like, shit. I'm sorry, Janice. My name is Kierra Johnson. I'm the Deputy Director of the Task Force, celebrating my 1-year anniversary here at Creating Change. And what I want to say is, actually what I want to do is I would really like to breathe with you right now as a part of my community. So if we could take a couple of breaths, that would be good. People down for that? Okay. 1, 2, 3. One, 2, 3. One, 2, 3. Our opening was super tongue-in-cheek, so which is why I'm not on script right now. And one of the things that Andy's supposed to ask me is, Kierra, what are your favorite things about creating change? As hard as it is to receive criticism and developmental feedback, it is a part of being in community together. Evolution doesn't happen quickly, and we have to hold each other every step of the very long path that it takes to get there. I love that we do this here. I love the programming, but I actually like what happens off program. The time we spend in elevators together, the time I accidentally said I wanted to spoon somebody in sign language instead of it's nice to meet you. The time at the bars, the times where we actually have deep conversations that really challenge how we see the world or how we act every day. So thank you for all of you who have already shown so much courage Thank you for all the courage that will be shown for the rest of this week and beyond. And welcome to Creating Change. I love you. Thank you.
So welcome to Creating Change. I know that for so many of us, this conference has been a lifeline. My first Creating Change was in 1995 here in Detroit. I couldn't say anything better than what Kierra just said. I wasn't joking. This is an activist conference. This is what we're here for, and you're who we're here for. There are a lot of things I'm looking forward to at this conference. We've put together a great program, but I completely agree that it's the magic that happens in the hallways, in the elevators, in those spaces where we connect with each other. We've got so much going on. It's all in the program book. I'd rather just reserve some time for our beautiful Detroit Plenary panel, who are going to really give us a great sense of what makes this city magical. Its rich history of activism, not to mention its music. Before we do that, I'm going to introduce Roberto Tijerina, who is going to talk about language justice here at the conference. I also want to recognize that we've got 20 deaf folks at the conference this year, which is more than we've ever had, which is fabulous. And I want to really thank the QDRC, the Queer Deaf Resource Center, for their support, and I encourage you to support them as one of, I believe, 2 queer deaf organizations in the country, the other one being the Gallaudet Student Organization. They need your support. They've supported us in making this conference more accessible and more meaningful and more inclusive for all the members of our community. So without further ado, take it away, Roberto.
Buenas noches, ¿cómo están?
What up, though? How y'all doing?
Este año marca 50 años desde la rebeldía de Stonewall.
This year marks 50 years since the Stonewall Rebellion.
Cuando mujeres trans y dragas, negras y latinas y de color tomaron las calles para hablar sus verdades.
When Black and Latinx and brown trans women and drag queens took to the streets to speak up.
Y qué bueno ver que esa tradición sigue, así que gracias por los que vinieron a hablar sus verdades.
And so great to see that this tradition continues. So thanks to those who came up to speak their truth.
Ahora queremos explicar cómo vamos a crear un espacio para que todas las cosas importantes que nos tenemos que decir las podemos comunicar.
And now we're going to go over some guidelines so that all the things that we want to say can be fully understood and learned by everyone.
Para ustedes que son veteranos de Creating Change, saben que este año, como de costumbre, el Task Force está proveyendo interpretación entre inglés, español y lenguaje de señas.
For those of you who are Creating Change veterans, we know that the task force and Creating Change makes an effort to provide interpretation into American Sign Language, Spanish, and English.
Pero para ustedes que es su primer Creating Change o que quizás nunca han trabajado con un intérprete o una intérprete,
and for those of you who maybe this is your first Creating Change or you've never worked with an interpreter before,
brevemente unas pautas de cómo crear un espacio multilingüe.
we'll share some very quick guidelines on how to create a multilingual space.
Primeramente, en las sesiones plenarias en este salón, el equipo de interpretación se encuentra en esa esquina, así que si lo ocupa el equipo, lo puede recoger allá.
And so in this space, if you need interpretation equipment, you can pick one up over there in the corner.
Durante el día, durante las sesiones de talleres, la mesa de servicios de interpretación se encuentra enseguida del área de inscripción.
And during the workshops, the interpretation equipment can be found near the registration table.
El equipo ya está listo, simplemente hay que prenderlo, pero si por alguna razón no le funciona, déjenos saber y nosotros nos encargamos de ello.
The equipment is ready for you. You just need to turn it on. If for some reason it doesn't work, let us know and we'll handle it.
Por último, el equipo se nos ha prestado por diferentes organizaciones, así que pedimos que al final del día, por favor, no se vayan sin entregar el equipo porque lo tenemos que regresar.
The equipment has been donated to us by several organizations, so at the end of the day, please make sure to return them so we can give them back to the organizations that donated them.
El concepto más básico de interpretación es que el intérprete no puede repetir si no puede escuchar y entender lo que se dice.
One of the basic guidelines about interpretation is that the interpreter can't repeat what's been said if they can't hear or understand.
Así que si no les podemos escuchar, vamos a hacer esta señal que signifique alce la voz.
So if we can't hear you, we'll be doing this hand motion, asking you to please raise your voice.
Si no les entendemos porque están hablando bien rápido, porque ya sé ustedes locas cómo se emocionan.
And if you're speaking real fast, because we know how you queens like to talk,
vamos a hacer esta señal que significa hable más despacio.
we'll be doing this hand motion, which means speak slower.
Por favor, nomás hablar una persona a la vez para que el intérprete no tenga que decidir la voz de quién privilegiar.
Please speak only one person at a time so the interpreter doesn't have to choose which voice to privilege.
Y por último, les invitamos que vengan en su plenitud y se expresen en el idioma que es más cómodo, sea inglés, español, pocho, y confíen que los intérpretes se van a encargar de que se entienda.
And we also invite you to come as you are and speak in the language you feel most comfortable in, whether that's English, Spanish, or Creole, and trust that the interpreter will interpret the message.
Y ahora queremos presentar a Jennifer Furlano, que va a elaborar cómo trabajar con intérpretes de lenguaje de señas.
And now we'll hand it over to Jennifer Furlano, who will give us some guidelines on how to work with ASL interpreters.
Good evening, everyone. I'm the ASL interpreter coordinator for the conference. Basically, the rules are the same in terms of how you use an interpreter, be it spoken language or signed language. The difference is sign language is visual language. Now, I've noticed that some of you, when you see two people signing, you don't want to walk in between the two of them. Sometimes you walk around, or sometimes you go like this. So don't worry about trying to duck in between. We are not shooting lasers out of our fingers. Don't worry about that. Just walk on through. We can still see each other. When you duck, it is even more of a distraction. But just keep on walking through. It's fine. If you want to get our attention, just tap us on the shoulder or get our attention by waving to us. It's really fine to do that, to get our attention. And to communicate with us, if there's an interpreter there, that's fine. But don't look at the interpreter. If you're talking to a deaf person, just look directly to the deaf person and talk to us, and the interpreter will be moving their hands next to you, but don't worry about them. Just look to us when you're talking to us. And don't say, oh, please tell her. Just say, hey, Jennifer. Speak directly to the person that you're communicating with. If you need an interpreter and there's not one around, we do have an office, an interpreter headquarters stationed over in the Renoir room, so please come over and request an interpreter. We're happy to get you one. Thank you all so much.
Gracias.
Thank you.
It is now my pleasure to introduce the co-chairs of the 2019 Creating Change Host Committee, Bridie Mae Johnson, Cara Mitrano, Liliana Angel Reyes, and David Nelson.
Good evening, everyone. Welcome to Detroit. I'm Cara Mitrano, one of the 4 co-chairs of this conference this year, and a student at Wayne State University. I hope you enjoy the multitude of workshops, plenaries, and caucuses this year, especially those with presenters from Southeast Michigan and Detroit itself. I also invite you to lean into the innovative conversations taking place at this conference and those that have been unofficially added, as our guests from this evening have so graciously informed us of. Detroit has a history of initiating national dialogues on issues of race, civil rights, gentrification, and other topics. Likewise, Creating Change hopes to spark dialogue on new and important ways. Some of these conversations may put you out of your comfort zone. Take this opportunity to broaden your perspectives and learn from others, especially those who have been historically or personally marginalized by the queer movement. Thank you. Various intersections of identity have shaped conversations within our communities, whose voices are heard and where resources are directed. For example, the asexual and aromantic communities are often left out of queer conversations. This year, they have an official hospitality suite and several workshops. We invite you to go see them. We hope you keep these ideas in mind throughout the conference and find something to bring back home with you at the end of the week. Thank you for joining us here in Detroit to learn, connect, persist, and resist.
How the hell are you, Detroit? So my name is Liliana Angel Reyes. I'm the Executive Director for Trans Sisters of Color Project. For those who don't know, Trans Sisters of Color Project is the only organization in Michigan ran specifically by trans women of color from the city of Detroit and works with trans women of color for and by the city of Detroit. And so for me, being a Latina trans woman, a Mexican trans woman, it's really, really, really important that I welcome you all to Detroit. You got that, and you're gonna continue to get that. And just understand that Detroit holds diversity and always has. It has one of the largest population of Middle Eastern people. It has one of the largest and growing population of Latino people, Latinx people, and it continues to grow. It also has one of the strongest, I would say, prove me wrong, trans women of color who organize, who love each other, and who are resilient. And it's important that I tell you that we organize as specifically trans women of color under the harshest conditions. And I really urge you all as activists to center trans women of color because of the violence and the deaths that happen to us. And just recently, we lost someone who was shot and killed in a park that's ours. And so we as trans women of color, through all that hurt, through all the anger, went to the court to represent and help represent her and her family, and we will continue to do so, and we will continue to fight. It would be lovely if you fought with us, because I feel sorry if you fight against us. And so, welcome to Creating Change, and specifically, welcome to my beautiful trans women of color. You uplift me, and you're everything that I've ever wanted to be in life. I love you.
So how y'all doing, Creating Change? My name is David Nelson. I am also one of the co-chairs. I just want to say welcome to Detroit. Seeing all of y'all faces makes all the hard work really worth it, because it's been really long planning, and I'm so happy y'all here. Love y'all. Thank y'all for coming. Have fun in Detroit.
Bonjour. I am. My name is Bridie Johnson, and I'm the Clinical Behavioral Health Supervisor at American Indian Health and Family Services right here in Detroit. We're an urban Indian health center, and we're right in between Southwest Detroit and Dearborn, so we sit tight with people that we love. May I just say, wow. It is a pleasure to see all of you here so late into the evening and in this city. I'm honored to be here as a chairperson for the 31st year of Creating Change. I remember many things my grandmother taught me growing up, but one that stuck out more than the rest is for all of you tonight. When you are scared, be strong. When you are weak, be humble. When you are victorious. So today, looking out here at all of you in this space has humbled me immensely. We have an amazing lineup and a conversation for you this evening, so I'm gonna get off this stage without further ado. I welcome a group of local Anishinaabe community members for a real opening ceremony to welcome the ground and the acknowledgement to this land that we are sitting on today. So I'm gonna need us to be silent and respectful as we kick off Creating Change 2019 in Detroit. Christy B., Knox and Christina, Chai Magwetch for your participation in this event.
Buju, Ani, Chimagwetch, Kichimanadu, Tikibe and Abishko Indigenous. That's how I introduce myself. And what I wanted to start with, that's part of the original language of this land, which is currently Detroit, and it was Anishinaabe land, and all right. Does anyone identify as Native? Is there anyone Native? Can you please stand with us? Native or Indigenous, can you please stand with us if you're able to? Okay. And then, all right. And if you're working on Native or Indigenous rights and are able to stand with us, please do so. So we're gonna do a quick little exercise, which is how to say, give back and say thanks. Also, one of the, being humble. So saying thanks in Anishinaabe it could also be interpreted as miigwech. So if everyone can say miigwech with us. Miigwech. Okay. Yep, let's give it thanks.
Bonjour everyone. Magizigijigat Koi Indigenous Kaz, Anishinaabe and Dao, Wawiatanong, Ednokim, and Ondat. My name is Christy. Thank you so much for having us here today for this conference. We're really excited. And we just want to continue to welcome you to Anishinaabe land here. So at this time, if everyone could just take a few moments and also invite all your ancestors into the room, because this is an important practice that we have those who are strong with us as we do this work. Miigwech, thank you so much. And next, I just wanted to uplift an issue that so many communities are facing right now with climate change and extraction of our Mother Earth, and just for us to think about our water issues, right? So many communities are struggling right now as the waters are being privatized. They're being polluted through pipelines, tar sands, and other climate justice issues that we need to be fighting for. And as Indigenous people, we've always known this, and one thing that we do, and we'd like to invite you all to do as you're here in Detroit, because we're right by this beautiful river, and the name for Detroit is Wawiatanong, which means place that bends by the river. So we just invite y'all to go visit the river while you're here, right, and just send some positive energy, because we believe in those things too, that does create change as well in a spiritual practice. So we just invite everyone to do that while you're here. And yeah, we just want to welcome you to Detroit, welcome you to a city that has a primarily Black population, right? Uplifting those communities and honoring that. This is the last stop on the Underground Railroad, so we honor this is a space for liberation, for freedom. And a final grounding piece for everyone is that we cannot forget that this is stolen land, right? So this space is not recognized as the United States, Canada, and Mexico, but this is Turtle Island. So we welcome you to Turtle Island, and we hope that you have a great conference. And thank you for having us. Miigwech. Free Turtle Island and free Palestine.
We believe this conference should be about the city we're in. Up next, welcome local leaders and activists to talk about life on this land and in this city.
I'm here. I'm here. This is my seat. Okay. No problems. I'm here. I'm here. Are you here? Welcome to Detroit. I am Michelle Elizabeth Brown. I am from Detroit, as was my mother. I'm an original. I'm a public speaker, an author, an activist. Many of you know I'm from this community, okay? And today, I am the Black, lesbian, queer, diva queen who's gonna take you on this ride. When they wanted us to talk about Detroit, often you hear people talk about, oh, Detroit, it's that comeback city, it's that comeback city. We want to hear about it. How do you keep coming back? Well, to borrow from that great philosopher, LL Cool J, don't call it a comeback. We've been here for years. Before Cadillac landed here and called it Detroit, our First Nation was here, okay? Our African American brothers and sisters came up here to go through the Underground Railroad looking for freedom. And later in the Great Northern Migration, we came up here looking for jobs. Our immigrant community, many landed on Ellis Island and caught the train and came right here to that place that Ford right now is going to make an innovation place. But that was our gateway. We built this city on rock and roll and blood, sweat, and tears. So don't call it a comeback. We've been here for years. And this panel here is going to knock you out. To do them justice, I'm going to let them each introduce themselves and their link to the history, the strength, the power that is right here in Detroit, Michigan. And I'm going to let Cecilia get us started.
So, bonjour, Nigegans Papi Indigenous Has, Ajijak Dodam, Tweakmigdang, Minawa, Mashki ZB, Indojba, Namanitigan Indao, Juma Pel Cecilia LaPointe. I said my name is Little Laughing Otter. I'm Crane Clan. I come from the Keweenaw Indian community in the Bad River Band of Lake Superior, Ojibwe, and I live in the land beneath the trees, otherwise known as Manistee, Michigan in the north. And my name on the driver's license, the colonial driver's license, and the colonial social security card is Cecilia LaPointe. Our culture is directly connected to the land and the water here. That is who we are. There is no separation. The colonial names are destructive. The infrastructure is destructive. We all know that because it's crumbling. So this is who we are. We work my primary work is racial justice within our communities and healing our people and empowering our people. And it's really important in these times to understand that there is a process of centering our people and giving us a space, and it's just beginning.
You guys are giving me so much energy. If I don't stand up, I'm gonna have my leg tapping, so I'm just gonna stand up. And I'm gonna let y'all know, this is Detroit versus everybody. So you bring it, and we got something for you. My name is Cynthia Lorraine Thornton. The Lorraine is important because that was my grandmother's middle name. My grandmother was a hot, petite woman, and she would whoop yo, you know what, because she knew who she was. She knew what her family had to do to be able to provide for her. They came up from Alabama, my great-grandmother and my great-grandmother's family. Worked in the auto industry, so I'm a child of labor. My mother is a widow twice over. Never worked more than as a bank teller, but she is able to live retired with dignity because of the UAW and the contracts that they had. I was fortunate enough to be born early enough that I actually will have a retirement if they don't fire me first. And let's be clear, I'm an activist here, I'm an activist everywhere. My job is like, is she off today? When is she gonna be? And that's fine. But I got a cell phone. So who am I? I am whatever I need to be to fight whatever is wrong, and whoever I can help, that's what I'm doing. I'm Cynthia Thornton, Lorraine's granddaughter.
My name is Abdul El-Sayed. I go by Abdul because that's just a lot of names. I'm a physician by training. More importantly, though, I am the grandson of Suad. Suad is the wisest, most intelligent human being I've ever met in my life. She never got to go to school. She was my grandmother, born and raised in Alexandria, Egypt. My father immigrated this country back in 1978. He was between going to Bayreuth, Germany, and Detroit, Michigan. And at that point, Bayreuth was only a couple decades past Nazism. His name's Muhammad, so he chose to come to Detroit, Michigan. And he came here to go to Wayne State University, studied to be an engineer. And I was his eldest son, along with Fatin El-Komi, an incredible woman who came here as a physician. They divorced, and so both got remarried. I ended up staying with my father, who then remarried a woman named Jackie Johnson, now Abdul El-Sayed. And her family is from a place called St. Louis, Michigan, and you'll probably get used to this if you're not from Michigan, but we show people where we're from on our hand. And St. Louis is literally the geographic center of the state of Michigan. She was a daughter of the American Revolution, so I was raised by Muhammad and Jackie. My whole life, I got to grow up in a home where, in theory, we should have been experiencing a clash of civilizations, but actually, more than anything else, we were from Detroit, and so we knew this whole conversation about civilizations really only boils down to the way that you interact with people in your daily life. I chose to become a doctor because my grandmother, Suad, believed in empathy. She had this ability to just engage people in the way that she was, to see them where they were. And after serving as the health commissioner in this city, I did a crazy thing and decided to run for governor of the state of Michigan in 2018. I did not win that race. That being said, I had the privilege of meeting people in their town halls, in their homes, in their living rooms, in a moment in this country where we have never lacked empathy anymore. And I got to see people. And I've always believed that people are fundamentally good, even if politics is not. And I come away with that experience believing that people are fundamentally good. But then I got the opportunity to be raised by Suad, and I got to grow up in this city, so I've always known that that, in fact, is true. I look forward to the conversation. Welcome to the city of Detroit.
So we're going to get right into it. And, many of you, I host a show called Collections by Michelle Brown, and it's really just a dialogue, but we're just going to talk. We're just going to talk about some things here, but things that are really unique to Detroit. Now, one of the things that people talk about is diversity. And what many people forget is that before Mexican Town, Corktown, Greek Town were all destinations, they represented communities here in Michigan. And we might have fought, we might have had disagreements, we all faced discrimination, but we found a way out of no way. As you look now, and I'm going to start with Abdul, as we look now, with all this divisiveness and all of these things that really colonizers are doing to keep us apart, how do we build upon our differences to reclaim that beloved community?
Yeah. So I'll tell you a story. When I was training in medical school, I did part of my training in the VA. And there was a gentleman whom I was assigned to take care of who did not want to be taken care of by Abdul El-Sayed, let alone Abdurrahman Muhammad Al-Sayed. And I remember sitting there outside his room thinking, my God, this guy is just going to tear me a new one. And I walked up to the front door and I just said, listen, I've got a job to do and I'm hoping that you'll just tell me what's wrong. And he said, I told you I don't want to see you. I said, that's fine, but I'm just going to stand here. Nobody else is going to stand here as long as I am. So just start telling me what's going on. I'll put my hands up where you can see him just in case. And so I'm standing there with my hands up and he's telling me what's wrong. 30 minutes later, I look at him, I said, sir, can I just put my hands down? He said, yeah. So I put my hands down, then he welcomed me in the room, and after a while, I said, look, you've told me your whole story. I'm the only person who's heard the whole thing. Do you mind if I go talk to my attendant? A couple days passed by, he got discharged. He waited outside of the hospital for 2 hours until I started my shift. And he said, you know, the one thing that you did was that you actually took the time to listen. And I think one of the challenges that we often have in a world where we are so divided up by so many identities is that we've missed the opportunity to listen because we're so quick to speak. And I think we've got an opportunity to really ask ourselves, what does it mean to listen to another? Even if that person doesn't like me just for who I am. Because there's a moment there where you see beyond the identity into the humanity that all of us share. That only happens when I dignify you by saying what you have to say is important. Because in the end, the frustration we almost always have as people who've been marginalized is that people don't want to listen to us. And at some point, to me, it says, you know what? There's an opportunity to be bigger than. To say, even if you don't want to listen to me, I'm going to listen to you, and in doing that, I'm going to dignify your humanity. Everything you thought you feared goes away. And I think there's an opportunity, if we really want to build communities, move beyond this moment where we're parsed and divided, it's going to take looking people in the eye, opening our ears, and hearing their truths.
Well, Cynthia, I want to ask you, my mother worked at Uniroyal. We grew up in the Union. And what many people, and what they talk about, what many people don't remember, is before Dr. King gave that I Have a Dream speech in Washington, he gave it here. And he marched with labor. And a lot of the advances we have made as far as civil rights and social rights came because of union activity. Now, we see the breakdown and attack of unions. Okay, what do you see the role is, and how do then we pull people back in, get that spirit where we understand that everyone has a right to a fair wage, to a certain way of living. And this is what you do. And you're working in that field. What do you see?
Well, first of all, I was at that march. My mother was pregnant with me walking down Louisville. So now, it's really ironic that she waited till I was like over 50 years old to tell me that. And I just thought, out of all the stories you've shared, you just didn't think that was relevant. And she was like, well, I didn't think it was a big deal. That being said, what do I see? In Detroit and the surrounding area, video goes a long way. People really do not realize that just a few miles from here, people died to be able to get a union contract. That Walter Reuther, who is, that freeway, Walter Reuther Freeway, for those who don't know, and I didn't know. I had the opportunity to tell his nephew I didn't know who Walter Reuther was. So it says a lot about suppression of information and about education. So what I do a lot is simply inform people. They don't know. If they get a union job, they just think that's because I have to pay union dues. It has never occurred to them that someone actually fought, literally, bricks, sticks, rocks, pistols being bopped upside your head. It's my firm belief that Walter Reuther was assassinated. He and his wife died in a plane crash after the man had been shot at in his house, after both of his brothers, Victor and Roy, had been attacked. So if anybody wants to work that hard to keep something from me, it must be pretty good. And that's pretty much how I broke. Who wants to take something from you that's not worth having? And it gives most people pause, in addition to the videos and seeing a few more miles north in Saginaw, where you had women in heels, because women had to wear dresses and heels then, standing outside of a plant, breaking out the glass in a plant because their husbands, sons, etc. were occupying that plant in order to get a living wage. The only way that they could keep that employer from throwing them out and just bringing in anybody was to stay there. So how do you get rid of that tear gas that you've thrown in there? The women did it, in their heels, in their swing coats, being drugged down the street by police. These are the stories that we have to tell so people can understand. This did not just come because you got a covered position. This is why you're being resisted. And why? To have a voice in the terms and conditions of your employment. Who knows your job better than you do? If your employer needs something, who is the person that can tell them what needs to happen, how I can save you money? Why is it so important that you have more money than you can spend in your lifetime, your children's lifetime, or your grandchildren's lifetime? These are the things that we fight for. And as LGBT people, it's a union contract. In Michigan, I'm not protected by the Elliott Larson Civil Rights Act. I'm protected by my UAW contract.
Okay.
So that's what I tell people.
Well, that's good. One of the things that, because, and I'm glad we're working our way into that, and we are part of that beloved community. A while back, we had Thomas Friedman come out with his book, like, The World is Flat. And it's like, oh, happy day. We have technology. Everyone can go and work everywhere. But we know for many communities who don't have access to broadband, who might not have a home computer, who are on the lower rungs of a socioeconomic ladder, which also includes many of the LGBTQ community, we don't have that access. What do you see is the holdups in your community, and I'm going to start with you, Cecilia, to accessing that wonderland of this global economy where the world is fat and we can just tune in, turn on, and find those jobs anywhere and live our best lives?
Well, I would say in our Native communities in the north, in Anishinaabe, we do not have the same access as the urban areas do. And I have lived within and on the Little River Band of Ottawa Indians Reservation for 9 years, and I see the difference in people's eyes. When I come to the urban core for presentations or any other work, I can see the difference. And it's also colonialism. Our people are suffering. So when someone says, go get a job, you might have to drive 30 minutes. You might have to be in a racist work environment, and I've been there, and dealing with multiple oppressions, dealing with, there's only a few jobs in the town. There's only a few jobs on the res. So what are you going to do? So when people, you have to think outside of the colonial terms of what it means in terms of progress. And to go back to diversity, in the North, we do have to organize with conservative people. And I know that might be frightening to some of you here, but it can happen. And conservative people are my allies. They often have seen me and my work. They will support the work in our communities, and breaking down those boundaries is key because those are the resources. And also with jobs, housing. We experience, the lack of that, a lack of affordable housing. There's things such as the availability of alcohol within our communities, which is extreme. You see that in Detroit. In Detroit, you're 0.7 miles from a liquor store or a bar. And to me, that is environmental racism. But you come to the rural and you come to our Native communities, which basically a reservation is just it's a prison camp. That was the model. So you got to know what it's about to understand what the end goal is. But we are resisting, we fight against it, and there's a lot of beauty that comes out of our pain. And so with the access to resources, we're creating. And it's hard because the infrastructure is denied to us systematically.
Oh, Abdul, you talked about how you were running for office, and you talked about your positions before with the city. Now, we know we've got Midtown, and I'm not hating on Midtown. I love Midtown. Hey, rise of the creative class. Thank you. All right, so we've got the Cass Corridor, but we also have people who do not have access to clean water. We have people whose water is being cut off, who don't have access to jobs, who don't have access to transportation to get jobs, who have lead poisoning, asbestos. All of these things are happening around this bubble. And that's happening to that beloved community that includes each and every one of us. How do we address that?
Yeah. So we're here at a conference talking about multiple liberations. And at the same time, you've got billionaires flying home from another conference in a place called Davos. Now, I'm going to ask by a show of hands, how many people here are billionaires? Yeah, me neither. But what they've done is they've created a system that basically tells us, right, that anything and everything ought to be the source of making money. That if you can own a particular thing, that should be a means by which you can raise your wealth, and that if you're raising wealth, you're doing a good thing in the world. And we have to ask ourselves about the principle underlying that. Because that's exactly why you end up getting 10 square miles of a 140 square mile city where everybody talks about a comeback, simply because you can go and have a fancy dinner or maybe go and see a show, whereas you've got people in the rest of the city of Detroit who can't even get access to basic things like water or a good public school. And so what tends to happen, right, when we talk about the challenges that multiple communities face, is that we're pit against each other, competing for the scraps left behind from the folks who are flying first class to Davos. And so we've got to stand together and say, listen, my struggle is your struggle. And as I've traveled the state of Michigan, right, there is this way by which the folks who own the means in this state have pit the city of Detroit against the rest of the state of Michigan. Here's the thing. Detroit to Flint, or up north in the UP, you talk to poor or working or retired folks, they're talking about the same challenges. Why can't we provide people water? Why does my kid's school still look like it does when I went there? Why is it that I can't get access to basic health care and I've got to worry about going to 3 jobs because the only protection that I have is a minimum wage law that's way past overdue for change? So we've got a responsibility in rooms like this to come together and say, we will not fight each other anymore. Instead, I will see my own struggle in you. And together we'll stand up to this system that has led to our oppression.
Now, Cynthia and Cecilia, you're our ally. We're queer, okay? How important is it to each of you for us to own our place at the table in these struggles for clean water, for adequate housing, for educational opportunities, for our civil rights, but also being mindful that some of these people, like you said, you have to work with conservatives. They might not care, but clean water is as important to you for your child as it is for theirs. How important is it to you to both make it a point that not only do we have a seat at the table, but we're serving it up. we are defining, helping change it, and saying, this is our issue.
Me first? That's it? Okay.
You can wrestle it out.
For me, it's central because I wasn't born knowing that I was gay. When I knew I was gay, I knew I was born gay. So I grew up in the same community, the same racism, the same sexism, the same poverty, although I didn't know I was poor, that a lot of people did. And I refused to let anyone separate me out and say, well, you sit over here. As the president of Pride at Work Michigan, I spend most of my time when I'm teaching cultural competency is focusing on what we have in common. I drink water, you drink water. My pipe's messed up, so are yours. If they fire me, guess what? You're next. And haven't you noticed that there's a pattern? And what makes you think that because you're white, I'm not, are you part of the administration? Are you management? Are you somebody? Now, if you're somebody's friend, cousin, so-and-so, you know, that's a whole different point. But I refuse to let somebody separate me from humanity, whatever race it might be, whatever color or form it comes in, and I don't really care if you're not a citizen. Because guess what? We weren't either till somebody came over here and took it. So I just will refuse to own what that narrative is. And I will always resist where I see it wrong. Cecilia is somebody that's gonna teach me a lot. Just in email, I was like, wow. So we think of it as a black-white world. I lived in Arizona, I'm familiar with the Reyes. My brother was born in Arizona. But when this sister talks, I get a whole different vibe. And that is, like Abdul said, we must listen to one another. When this man ran, let's just say things changed. But I believe him. Don't look like him, never been to Egypt, want to go, tell mom and dad I'm still, you know.
Hey, Cynthia. Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
So yeah, regarding what you had said with the binary, and that's one thing I just need to address, and I've been addressing, and I think we need to have conversations around this. You know, I grew up down here, and I have, you know, I come from the Union UAW roots. My father is Ojibwe Métis, and my mom is mostly European, and we have the indigenous Sami heritage as well, the Laplanders, the reindeer herders. So being multiracial, my family's been multiracial since the 1600s. So we've been merging with the Huron, then the French, the Nipissing, then the French, then Ojibwe, which makes us the Métis. Métis is an identity that's recognized in Canada, and if you just go across the river, we have more rights. So as a Métis person, Ojibwe Métis, we're recognized, but not here because the United States is obsessed with maintaining the black and white racial binary, and that is harmful to everyone. It's painful because our people are suffering, and you know, many of our people, being that we are multiracial, we may be very light, we may be very dark. That's my family. Some of my cousins, being that they're very, you know, very light, they can never get brown in the summer, you know, they can never, you know, so that doesn't happen. But some of my cousins, they're like, you know, you can do that. And so there's also people, some of my family, my relatives, my extended family on the rise, they may have red hair, they may have blonde hair, but they may be more by blood. But blood doesn't define identity in colonialism. That's another concept that's painful. So with the black and white racial binary, what happens is I believe, and I know, that it is intentional. It's intentional to maintain settler colonialism and violent occupation. And so with that, we have learned recently about Nathan Phillips, and that is bringing many of our issues to the table, but still white supremacy is coming down on us and coming down on our communities, and it's making us invisible. It's vilifying him. And you know what, that's happened to me. I've seen the look of that white man looking at me, or that white woman, you know, looking down, well, you must be something else. You must be the other. You must be this because you're mixed, so you're wrong. no, I'm not wrong, I'm right. And I'm not saying right as conservative, I'm saying right as, conservatives would love that, right? I'm right. No, I am about working with the people, and I am about difficult conversations because we have to. You know, the clock is literally ticking, and our people are suffering. So with the binary, back to that, just to remind everybody that it's really important. In Michigan, mentioning the different dynamics and the different identities, we have, you know, I often feel when I come down from the north, I feel invisible, and I go back up and I'm like, well, even my skin tone like changes. I feel like people see me. They know I'm Anishinaabe, but I come down here, they don't know I'm Anishinaabe. And I think that's a lot of what our people feel in the city, so we need that visibility. Please give us that space, because this is our space, you know? So I will end with that.
Okay. I'm not letting you off the hook. Okay. You aren't part of the LGBTQ community, but you're in a very important part. You're an ally. How, and you're here, I mean, how do you wear your ally cape? And why did you feel it was important to be a part of this conversation?
Yeah. So I, you know, for me, just a note on identity. When I tell people that I'm both African American and not black, it blows people's minds. And so I know what it means to have to try and create a space for oneself. And there is I hope, a profound empathy that comes with recognizing how it feels to be left out, to be erased, not to be listened to, not to be appreciated, not to be counted. And what it means to be almost erased in a very visible way, that you specifically don't belong in any one particular group. And I think I wear my allyship because I appreciate profoundly how it might be to be a member of a community group that has had to struggle to be counted, to be seen, to be appreciated, to be invited, to be empowered. And the way it looks to me is to recognize that I will actually never know exactly what it means, and that the best thing I can do is to listen and to learn and to be present with and to empower and to create space for. And when I'm invited in that space, to be in that space because I think it's important to appreciate what it means to be in spaces that are held by folks who have worked so hard to create them.
So when you go back to your tribe, you know, when you go back to your peeps, when you go back to your colleagues, and they say, well, what you do, man? And you say, well, I was at Creating Change. And so what were you doing down there? And, you know, what is Creating Change? And you tell them, what are the kitchen table, over the fence, round the water cooler conversations that you need to encourage your friends, family, those who are allies, to have about the importance of inclusion of everyone, particularly members of the LGBTQIA community. And after he answers, I want to ask both of you, what are the conversations that you need to have with your straight family members who say, I love you, but you know when they go to work, they don't say a mumbling word. So let's start with you.
In the spirit of listening, I'm really a lot more interested in hearing what you have to say. The only thing I'll say is, and I don't talk about it much, because I don't intend to tokenize her as a politician. I've seen way too many politicians tokenize folks that they know from communities that they don't belong to. My little sister identifies as queer, and watching the conversations that she has had, some successfully and some still struggling through with members of the Muslim community and the Arab American community and members of our own family has been a deeply humbling experience. And I hope that someday I get to carry myself with the same kind of grace under pressure that she has. But more than anything else, I think it goes back to that point of just being willing to share a space and to listen to somebody else's truth, and to be able to reflect with them on where they are without passing any sort of judgment, except to say that I want you to know that I dignify your humanity. That thing that we all share, even if I'll never share your experiences, and know that I'll always be there for you in the way that one human should be for another, one brother should be there for a sister. Those are the kinds of conversations I hope that we can keep having around dinner tables, around water coolers, to be willing to listen, to be willing to be present with, be willing to bear witness to people's pain, and to help them through it, and recognize that you are in that same boat in one way or another.
So I want to ask Cecilia to answer that next, because like you said, you have to work with Republicans, and you're wearing a whole bunch of capes here, and you've got to walk a line, and sometimes to have those conversations can be scary, can be dangerous, but it can also be bold and necessary.
Yeah.
How do you do that?
Well, I don't necessarily work with Republicans directly.
Yeah.
It's more about working, the main goals of the Native Justice Coalition are to, this work is by and for people in our communities. So basically, I live in a purple county, and most northern Michigan is red as a beet. So I can go in and out of these different spaces, and I appreciate one thing I wanted to say from what I last said is that growing up down here, you have the UAW union it also can be a place of blindness, right? So anything that you grew up in, anything that you know, even though my great-grandfather on my mother's side assisted in the founding of the UAW, I carry that with me. He carried a gun to protect himself. So we have those socialist roots. And so I wanted to, living in what is considered northwestern Michigan, and it's just the start of northwestern Michigan out of West Michigan. Many people know that are from Michigan here that West Michigan is very conservative, kind of like the Bible Belt of the state. And I've been through some things with the Bible Belt, trying to challenge their stuff. But I just believe in, it's helped me to grow. Like, it's helped me to become who I am today. And without that, I think I would have had a more narrow vision. So it also challenges me when, and I want to center two spirits. So, because we're the original. Before colonial labels of LGBTQIAA+, we have always been here. And so our people are suffering. I've been bullied in Indian Health Service, and I've addressed it with the community didn't address it. But the thing is with that, the community is sick. So you have to look at this when our people are not well due to colonialism. I do not take it on. I take the vision of my clan, which is Crane Clan, and it's about leadership. And we have ancestral chiefs in our lineage, and I take that very seriously. So it's about going, is this personal towards me as a two-spirit person, as an Ogijijakwe? And I say no. It is personal, but it's not. The level of colonialism is the same. Now people are aware of what we have been experiencing, right? So working with conservatives, I have to, because they may be someone that stops violence from happening. They may see it and stop it in the north, because they're our neighbors. That's what we have to do.
Cynthia?
Can you repeat the question?
I said you had that look, like, okay, where were we?
Because Cecilia takes me somewhere, but that's...
Okay, what are the conversations that you have with friends, family, colleagues, who say, oh, Cynthia, we love you, but when they go to that church on Sunday and Reb says, cast them all to a hot place, or they vote a different way, what are the conversations that you have to maybe not change their heart and mind, but to move it?
I've been out over 30 years. They don't ask me those questions.
Do they invite you still?
Here's what people that have known me, number one, they said, we always knew. To which I said, why didn't you tell me? Because you could have helped the sister out. So I'm fortunate in that I am who I've always been, and that's what they tell me. You haven't changed. And it's not like you were asking for permission. And what my mother said was, I love you, I'm not gonna lose my daughter over this. My brothers were all like, So for them, it was really the way you want to see the world. She is who she is, and that's who she's always been. We love her, we don't always like her, but we know what to expect from her, so if we don't want to know the truth, we do not ask her. And when I meet new people, I come as I am. I bring who I am, and in this work, I purposely, why don't you grow your hair out again because I don't like high curlers? Why don't you be more feminine because I never was, you made me wear that dress? So, now that I don't have to do that, it's useful in my work because anybody at this point, if your gaydar don't go off, or people who don't even know they have gaydar kind of say, something, there should be a question, and I'm good with that because then I'm not invisible. But for those who aren't there yet, you can get there, and I am that person to let you see that when nobody threw a rock at her, nobody called her a dyke. I don't know if she would care if they called her a dyke or anything else. Why? Because she reclaimed that. We just call it a wrap-up.
Okay, well, we're getting close to
Or for me.
wrap-up, and I've got 2 questions. One of the questions, and hey, love Cass Corder. Cass Corder made me who I am. One of the things that, I had the great fortune of working with James and Grace Lee Boggs. And one of the things that Jimmy often asks, and that I often ask myself when I get ready to do something is, what can we be that our children might see? And briefly, would each of you answer that question? And well, do you want to start, Cynthia?
No.
Okay, all right. Okay, there you go.
Well, I don't have any children, but I would like to adopt because I'll give some more information, is that Native children are the least likely to be adopted out of any group in the US. So I would like to in the future, but right now I'm still, focusing on growing this work. And that is also a part of the work. But I would like to see a more decolonial, we're working on this decolonization, but more of a decolonial future, which includes love, more love within our communities. Because that's the thing I see is many of our people are afraid to love. And I'm not just talking about romantic love. I'm talking about the love that we have a right to.
Okay.
I just had a baby girl about 14 months ago, and I'm missing bedtime right now, so a little bit of my heart. I hope that in her mother and she sees people who are willing to speak truth to power and are willing to listen to pain.
Here's on you go.
I don't have any children. I wanted to adopt. Seriously, I did. I wanted to adopt teenage. That's so funny. Dang. Y'all sound like my mother. Anyway, since I seem to have, adopted everybody's kid because I feel like this is the fight. And I'm, the great thing about this conference, and those of do not get mad at me for calling y'all kids. It's a good thing. You're younger than me, and you taught me a lot. But I am incredibly optimistic. I won't be raising any babies, but I am so confident that those babies that are coming along are going to have some hellified examples. And so, what I want for the kids that are in the system, the LGBT kids in the system, for those of you who can afford it, monetarily, emotionally, etc., that's what I want, for those kids to have a home. I wasn't able to do it because the system is jacked. I didn't put on there, I'm a queer woman. But it's like, again, really? Did you need to tell us? And so it's codified. And it becomes a contest. And I know my abilities, I know my limitations. So what do I want for the kids for the future? I want them to see what a Creating Change conference looks like. I want them to see what it means for people to be their authentic selves and to grow. What I can contribute to that, I do every day. And at some point, I'm not sure how that goes, but the political side, what I would say to all of you is get engaged. Make sure your Congress people know who you are. They are people. They put their pants on, their panties on, whatever it is that they put on, the same way you do. And the sooner that we are willing to look them in the eye, which is how I met him, I understand that, but he will. And he knows me by name, he got my phone number. So, and that's important. When I walk into that space now, and if they don't remember anything, there's the gay girl. And I'm good with that. I need them to say there's the gay people, not just in gay space, but in every space. Because when they answer to us, we don't go to the gay voting booth. We don't go to the queer one. Be in those spaces so that they know who you are, you know who they are, and they answer to you. And by the way, how about you run?
Okay.
I walked for him. I knocked doors for him. I'll come. Now, if you're not in Michigan, I do have my limitations. But you want to fly a sister in, I'll knock doors for you.
Okay. So one of the things, and you see, count me down. One of the things that I do want to say is our kids are our kids. One year I went to Howell because they wanted people to talk about bullying. And, they got the message that a agitator was coming up from Detroit. They sent a police car to follow me around. But after we did this talk, this woman who was white, and she's like, what are you doing up here? And one of the things I had to say is, you know what? These are our kids. I didn't have to birth them. They don't have to be black. They are our kids. And as an LGBT kid born, every minute, we need to be there for them. So we're at 0, but I'm going to ask this one last question, and then we're done, okay? And then we're done, okay. So Creating Change happened after, 32 years ago, the March for LGBTQ gay and lesbian rights in Washington. And the message was, go home and get to work. Would each of you briefly tell the attendees what you hope they would take from Detroit to build on their work back home? And we're going to start this way and go. And Cynthia, I got my eye on you, okay? Okay, all right? In fact, I might let you go last, okay? All right, go ahead.
Well, the easiest thing that you can do is decolonize LGBTQ and just put 2S before LGBTQ. That's the easiest thing you can do. So take that with you. In Canada and many of our First Nations communities, like we have, there's Sault Ste. Marie, Michigan, which is in the north. We're going to do this again. And, 5 hours from Detroit, there's Sault Ste. Marie. It's not Sault Ste. Marie. It's even Amy Goodman on Democracy Now!, she said that recently. She said Sault Ste. Marie when she was interviewing the tribal chairman from there. And I was like, no, it's Sault Ste. Marie. So Sault Ste. Marie, and the cross is Sault Ste. Marie, Ontario. We just say Sioux, Michigan, Sioux, Ontario. So, over there, they're already doing it. They're saying 2S. So that's easy. Also, just know that we're here. We've always been here. We're the original. That's it.
I'm going to say 3 things. The first is move into spaces as who you are without apologizing. Engage folks who you wouldn't regularly engage. Do it with a big smile on your face. Listen first, speak second. And you'll find that most of the time it's really hard not to smile at somebody who's smiling back at you. Number 2, I think it's easy in this moment where everything is marked by clicks to get used to a certain level of instant gratification. Real change doesn't happen that way. And we've got to be willing to lose many times before we win, and to recognize that even though loss is painful, loss still moves us forward. And so in moments, we've got to be saying, how do I gird myself for the challenge of this thing? Because equity doesn't come easily. It never has. Power is not given, it is taken, although leadership is always given, it's never taken. And then I think the third thing is to remember that in the end, however many setbacks we have, it is the fact that we're willing to stay in these fights, the fact that we are willing to lock arms together, despite the fact that we may not share the same experiences. It is that thing that guarantees us a future that looks better than the today that we're living in. And I think it's important to remind yourself of that, because there is hope and light at the end of the tunnel.
Bring it home, sister. Bring it home.
I'm going to tell you all something, and it's real simple, and it's not a Cynthia original. If you are not living on the edge, you're taking up too much space. That's it. Do not sit in the middle and let everybody else do the work for you, which I learned here that is not an issue. So I was very thrilled. But run. Run. Become the district chair. Become a precinct delegate. Don't sit back and wait for an invitation. If you're a citizen or you're not, there is a way for you to engage, but you have rights. But if you don't demand them, they will not give them to you. If you expect them to come looking for you and say, what can I do for you? That's a rare person, especially when there's other people beating you to the door to tell them all the things that they want. We don't have to have the money. I'm broke. I'm broke. Why? Because I can't get promoted. Why can't I get promoted? Because I won't stop telling truth to power. And I'm good with that. You know, fortunately, I don't have the kids. I'd like to have more money. But what I need is equality. I was born right before the Civil Rights Act passed. I was born in '63, it passed in '64. They've been lying to me my entire life, telling me I was equal. They've been telling me that I had all this opportunity, that I was going to be treated this way or that. Guess what? It ain't true. And it's not going to be true unless I demand it. So I've gotten a lot further since I stopped waiting on people to do the right thing. Don't be in the middle. Get on the edge. That's it.
I want to thank all of you for being here with us. I want to thank my panel, and I want to remind you, don't call it a comeback. We've been here for years.
Let's give it up one more time for that panel. So, you know, we could do this conference in DC every year, but this panel is an exact example of why we don't do that. Part of the experience of this conference is coming to a place and hearing from the people who live here. I was noticing Cynthia's shirt that said Detroit versus everybody. Don't let that scare you. The people here are extremely friendly. I really encourage you to talk to the volunteers who make this conference happen, talk to the hotel staff, get to know them. This city is pure magic. Something I didn't mention at the beginning, if you look over to your left, you'll see Anthony Weeks, who's our graphic facilitator. He is graphically transcribing these plenaries into beautiful murals. Some of his work is actually outside of this ballroom as well. I just want folks to sit tight. We've got one last part of the program tonight. We are really proud that SAGE, which is Services and Advocacy for LGBT Elders, has been part of creating change for many, many years. The annual SAGE Award is really important to us. It reflects the power and history of our community's elders. You know, we live in a society that doesn't tend to really value older folks. This conference is an exception to that. I really, I was thinking about it. It's the 50th anniversary of Stonewall, just thinking about the folks who came before us, but really not looking at elders as people who came before us, but people who are here now who are still doing stuff. So I want to welcome Michael Adams, the CEO of SAGE, to the stage. I've actually known Michael for about a decade now, going back to his days in Brooklyn when he lived in the Graham Home for Old Ladies. You can't even make this stuff up. That was really the name of the building that he lived in. But I digress. So welcome, Michael.
All right, thank you, everybody. It's great to see you all here. And, you know, I think we just heard some inspiring remarks that are a great introduction for what we're about to do, right? We heard our friends here talk about the fact that change doesn't come quickly, right? That it takes a long time, that we have to fight day in and day out, year in and year out. And we heard about the fact that we need to be on the edge. And what we're about to do now are celebrate our elders who have lived on the edge proudly and fiercely decade after decade after decade. And that's what this moment is about. So we want to thank Creating Change and the task force for giving SAGE the opportunity every year to honor a fierce LGBTQ elder who has spent their life blazing trails for our communities. This year, as we've said, we're celebrating the 50th anniversary of the Stonewall Uprising, that game-changing night when a fierce group of LGBTQ people, young people, most of them transgender, genderqueer, people of color, said no to police harassment, no to police violence. They rose up, they fought back, and they started a movement that has not looked back since. And that is the history that we celebrate here tonight, because the so-called Stonewall generation did not stop there. They went on and started our community's first liberation marches, and they kept going from there. A decade later, they fought their way through the darkest hours of the deadly AIDS epidemic, when it seemed that the powers that be might have been just as happy just to let us die. And our elders have been fighting ever since, because, as we all know, our collective struggles are far, far from over. Now, those young people who fought the police at Stonewall and who marched the streets for our liberation and who fought for our right to survive an epidemic and who fight on today, they are now our community's fierce elders. In fact, they are our sages, and we salute them tonight, and we should salute them every night. It's in this spirit that we present this year's SAGE Advocacy Award for Leadership in Aging. Cornelius Wilson is a revered community organizer and leader here in Detroit. Where he has been breaking paths for decades. During the darkest days of the AIDS epidemic in the 1980s, Cornelius saw that black men were not receiving the services they needed and deserved, and as a result, they were dying. So, he founded Men of Color Motivational Group to engage black communities around HIV awareness and to provide more community support. Cornelius then went on to work at Target Population Services, otherwise known as TAPS, for persons in recovery seeking support. And then he served as program director for Guiding Light Sober Living. More recently, Cornelius was one of the proud founders of SAGE Metro Detroit, which was started in 2015 and built on the legacy of the LGBT Older Adult Coalition. SAGE Metro Detroit's mission is to build awareness and promote change so that LGBTQ older folks can age with the dignity and authenticity that they have earned and that they deserve. Fierce sages like Cornelius often do not get the recognition they deserve. Too often, as Andy has referenced, our elder pioneers are forgotten by us, by the very communities that they helped to create. We say no to that, and given that, we celebrate that in 2017, Cornelius received SAGE Metro Detroit's Lifetime Achievement Award. And in 2018, he was named the State of Michigan's Senior Citizen of the Year. There are not enough awards in the world to honor and thank Cornelius enough for his lifetime of fierce advocacy on behalf of queer people of color, people living with HIV and AIDS, and our LGBTQ elders. For these reasons and many more, I'm honored to present Cornelius A. Wilson with the 2019 SAGE Advocacy Award for Leadership in aging. Please give it up for our sage, Cornelius Wilson.
Good evening, everybody. Thank you. Just thank you. I have a few remarks I'd like to share, if that's okay. I'll get it together in a minute. And for those of you all that know me, it won't take long. First of all, I want to say thank you to my brothers. My two biological brothers who have been supportive since I decided to come out. And they're here tonight. Okay, it's time to move past this emotion. I can't keep doing this because it makes you weak. First of all, thank you for this recognition. I am honored and humbled to be acknowledged by my peers, both prime and the new generation, for this work in advocacy that I've accomplished throughout the years. Bayard Rustin once said, "The proof that one truly believes is in his actions." Personally, I am a strong believer of action speaks louder than words. There are too many of us that need services, resources, and there's still too many of us that are sitting on the sidelines doing nothing. It's time for us to get up off our asses. Okay? It's time for us to do something different. Okay? I happen to be a same-gender loving, older adult, black man. I am at that age in my life now where I have some concerns about my housing. I have some concerns. I don't have a relationship. I don't have a significant other. So I want to make sure that my housing, and if something were to happen to me, I have no doubt that my family would look out. But as a community, we need to start looking at housing issues for us. LGBT-friendly housing issues that cater for us, that offer the supportive services that we need now, that we're gonna need in the future, okay? I love my community. I'm gonna finish this because I'm not a long speech person. I love my community, my Detroit community, my LGBT, SGL community, my African American community, my HIV community. And I hope that through all I do and through those that I assist, that I show that. The road for advocacy will never end. There will always be a need to speak up, know, and teach out loud for the rights and respect for those that live in silence, ignorance, and fear. Advocacy is never completed. Our work is never done. Keep pushing to create the change that this world needs. I would say to my young peers, I dare you to become an elder. I dare you to continue the work that's been done and be the one standing here so when the next generation of youth come along, you have improved upon the things that we have done. Thank you. I appreciate you. Give a good night.
Okay, everybody, I just have a few housekeeping things. I know there's a lot of fun to be had tonight after the plenary here. A few things quickly. Your name badge. Wear your name badge. They just checked my name badge, asked where it was coming up on stage. So I just want to acknowledge, you know, this conference is creating change. We create change. Change can be hard. So I'm a new director, working with new conference software. Some members of the team are working on things we've never worked on before, and some things got a little messed up. So, you know, some of the interesting emails that I've gotten over the past few weeks, you scheduled me 4 times for workshops in the same slot. I don't know, I just thought it would be kind of fun, maybe. You know, I submitted 4 presenters' names. There's only 1 in the program book. Basically, we just threw the names in a hat and picked one out. But no, I mean, I'm joking, but seriously, we know that there were some issues with that. We have created, for the first time, a mobile version of the schedule. So creatingchange.org/schedule. You can also go to creatingchange.org and click on mobile schedule. So sorry about that. We are gonna, this year's gonna be awesome. Next year's gonna be super awesome. There's a lot of stuff going on. As I said, it's all in the program book. This was a great opening night, but the evening's still young. We have the welcome dance starting in just a few minutes in the Ambassador Ballroom, which is downstairs. DJ Selena Style, who's a local DJ, is going to be there for your dancing delight. At the same time, we also have our fabulous annual opening cruise in the Mackinac Ballroom, which is on the 5th floor. And the Sexual Liberation Collective and our sex track organizers invite you to have some flirty fun to warm up your creating change. Just a few other things to check out. We've got an art studio space, colloquially referred to as the ASS, in Ontario West, and an exhibit hall right next door in Ontario East. They're right next to each other. We also have the Healing Justice practice space, if you need to get a little help with self-care, Reiki, acupuncture, all those good things. If you're a person of faith looking for a respite, check out our Many Paths gathering space. There are some hidden rooms off the lobby. If you go past that unfinished little market, you'll see a gift shop, make a right. We've got the healing space down there, as well as the Many Paths and HIV testing. There are also hospitality suites for people of color, elders, youth, asexual, aromantic folks, bisexuals and pansexuals, people with disabilities, transgender and genderqueer folks. It's a great place to refuel and connect. There are meals served there. We've got our own Sora Bajaj, who is queering the hotel gym every morning at 6:30. Everyone is welcome. If you're going out tonight or any night, we suggest you not venture out alone. There is safety in numbers, and if you haven't noticed, it's a little cold, so bundle up. Workshops start tomorrow at 9 a.m. I know that that is early, but you know, you can sleep when the conference is over. We've got another full program in our State of the Movement plenary. I encourage everybody to go to the dance and the opening cruise and have a great night. Welcome to Creating Change and welcome to Detroit.